Inside the hospital, it was about the patients, about being sharp, professional, reliable. And for the most part, I lived by that rule. But the truth is, sometimes your personal life follows you in whether you mean it to or not. That Thursday morning started like any other shift, at least in my mind. I got out of bed groggy, the remnants of a late night still clinging to me. My boyfriend Derek and I had gone out for dinner the night before, stayed up talking, laughing, and yes, making out like we were college kids again. It was one of those nights where everything else melted away and it was just the two of us. And maybe, in the back of my mind, I'd known he'd left his mark on me. But I didn't really think about it. I certainly didn't take the time to look in the mirror closely before heading to work. So there I was, throwing on my navy blue scrubs, tossing my hair up into a messy bun, grabbing my badge and stethoscope from the counter, and rushing out the door like I always did. The sky was gray with the early morning hour. My coffee was already lukewarm, and I was dreading the 12 hours ahead. I parked, walked through the sliding doors, nodded at the security guard who gave me the same smile he always did, and swiped my badge into the staff elevators. Nothing unusual, but hospitals have a way of turning the smallest details into magnifying glasses. And what I didn't know, not yet, was that I was carrying a bright, undeniable hickey like some sort of scarlet letter right on the side of my neck. The floor was already buzzing when I arrived. Our charge nurse handed me my patient assignments. One post-op appendectomy, one pneumonia patient on IV antibiotics, and Mrs. Whitaker, a sweet but sharp-witted dementia patient who needed constant redirection. I jotted down room numbers and reminders in my notebook, tied my hair a little tighter, and set off to start rounds. It was during my first stop that I felt it, the look. You know when someone's eyes linger a second too long, and you just know they've seen something? That was Maria, one of my coworkers and friends, leaning against the doorway as I adjusted an IV line for Mr. Davis, my pneumonia patient. When I turned to her, she was grinning, eyebrow raised. "What?" I whispered, thinking maybe I had spilled something on my scrubs. Maria stifled a laugh, covered her mouth with her hand, and leaned closer. Did you check yourself out before you came in?" My stomach dropped. "What do you mean?" She tilted her chin toward my neck. "Right side. Unless you fell off your couch and bruised one spot only, you've got yourself a hickey." The blood rushed to my face so fast I thought I'd pass out. I reached up, fingers brushing the tender, sore skin, and realized she was right. A sick wave of dread washed over me. "Oh no," I muttered under my breath, instantly tugging at my scrub collar to try and cover it. Maria bit back laughter. "Girl, it's not just there. It's loud, like you could direct traffic with that thing." "Shh," I hissed, horrified. My patient was watching me curiously, and I forced a smile. "You just rest, Mr. Davis. I'll check on you again soon." As soon as I stepped out into the hallway, Maria burst into muffled laughter. "This is not funny," I groaned, already imagining the gossip. "Oh, it's hilarious," she countered. "You better find some makeup or a scarf or something." Because if I noticed, trust me, everyone else will too. And she was right. Within the next hour, I caught at least 3 more coworkers sneaking glances at my neck. One of the new techs walked past me and whispered something to another, who stifled a laugh. Another nurse smirked at me like she knew my entire personal life. And the worst was when Dr. Bennett, one of the surgeons, paused mid-sentence during rounds, glanced at my neck, then cleared his throat and continued without comment. By mid-morning, the whispers had started. I heard them behind me at the nurse's station, the hushed, amused tones that people think are discreet, but carry loud in a busy unit. "Did you see her neck?" someone muttered. "Oh yeah," another answered. "Can you believe she came in like that?" I wanted to crawl into the supply closet and hide for the rest of the shift. But the real blow came when one of my patients noticed. Mrs. Whitaker, my dementia patient, was sharp in moments, and nothing ever slipped past her. She squinted at me as I adjusted her blankets and reached for her water cup. "Sweetheart," she said, her voice raspy but pointed. "You know you've got something on your neck?" I froze, cheeks flaming. "Yes, ma'am," I said softly. "Just a little bruise." Her eyes twinkled with mischievous understanding. I know what kind of bruise that is. Haven't seen one of those in years." Good for you, I nearly dropped her water cup. By noon, I was convinced everyone in the entire hospital had seen it. The looks, the smirks, the whispers. It was like being 16 again, caught making out behind the bleachers. Except now it was in the middle of my professional life, where everything I'd worked so hard to build could be chipped away in seconds. And of course, in hospitals, nothing ever stays quiet. Word travels. And it was only a matter of time before word reached someone who actually had the authority to do something about it. That moment came when I was in the middle of charting, tapping away at the keyboard, trying to ignore the heat in my cheeks. I felt a tap on my shoulder. I turned, and there stood Janet, our nurse manager. She had her arms crossed, lips pressed into that sharp no-nonsense line that made everyone in the unit sit up straighter. "Can I see you in my office?" she asked. The way she said it wasn't a request. My stomach plummeted. "Of course," I murmured, trying to keep my voice steady. As I followed her down the hall, I felt every pair of eyes burning into my back. The walk to Janet's office was slow and deliberate, though in my mind it felt like a march to execution. Every step seemed heavier than the last. I could feel the weight of whispers behind me, though no one dared speak while Janet was in sight. My heart pounded in my ears, and for a moment I thought about turning back, pretending I had to grab supplies or check a monitor. But I kept going, because what else could I do? Once you're called into her office, there's no escape. But just as we reached the hall that turned toward administration, Janet stopped short. One of the unit secretaries had jogged up to us with a chart in hand, flustered, telling her she was needed to sign off on an admission order. Janet turned to me, her eyes sharp. "I'll come find you again when I'm finished. In the meantime, focus on your patients." I nodded quickly, almost relieved at the temporary reprieve. It felt like a stay of execution. Back on the floor, I threw myself into patient care with more energy than I'd had all morning, partly out of guilt, and partly to prove to myself that I was still a competent nurse no matter what people were whispering about. My next stop was Mr. Davis, my pneumonia patient. He'd been admitted 2 days earlier, a man in his late 60s with a stubborn streak. The pneumonia had left him weak and short of breath, and his oxygen saturation had been dipping overnight. When I walked into his room, he was sitting upright in bed, coughing into a tissue. His nasal cannula sat slightly askew, and the monitor beeped with a steady, concerning rhythm. "Morning, Mr. Davis," I said gently, stepping to his bedside. "How are you feeling right now?" "Like hell," he rasped, his voice rough from days of coughing. "This thing's choking me." He tugged irritably at the nasal tubing. I smiled softly, putting on the calm tone that patients needed. "It's just helping you get more oxygen. Let me fix it for you." I adjusted the tubing, checked the flow rate, and glanced at the monitor. His sats hovered at 89%, lower than I liked. I pulled out my stethoscope and slipped it into my ears. "I'm just going to listen to your lungs, okay? Take some deep breaths for me." As he inhaled and exhaled, I could hear the crackles and congestion rattling in his chest. I noted it, already thinking through the plan. Nebulizer treatment, incentive spirometer coaching, maybe paging respiratory therapy again if he didn't improve. But in the middle of it, I felt his eyes on me. He had paused, narrowed his gaze, and then suddenly he chuckled, his hoarse laugh breaking up his words. "You know you've got a bruise on your neck, right?" Big one. I froze, stethoscope still pressed to his chest. My face went hot instantly. "Oh," I said quickly, pulling back and forcing a smile. "Yeah, just a bruise." Don't worry about it. Uh-huh, he muttered knowingly, giving me the kind of look people give when they're more amused than concerned. Guess the nurses get more excitement than we do. I wanted the ground to open up and swallow me. But instead, I cleared my throat, scribbled notes on his chart, and forced myself to stay professional. Let's focus on you for now. I'd like to get you sitting up straighter, and we'll try some deep breathing exercises. I pulled out the incentive spirometer and showed him how to hold it, encouraging him to inhale steadily to raise the little ball inside the chamber. His first try was weak. The ball barely lifted. Good start, I encouraged. Let's try again. Nice and slow this time. He tried again, coughing halfway through. I steadied the device in his hands, rubbed his shoulder lightly, and coaxed him to keep going. You're stronger than you think, I said. Every breath helps loosen up your lungs. We'll get you back on your feet. For the next 15 minutes, I worked with him, repositioning him, coaching him through breathing, fetching warm water for his throat. Each time he tried, the ball rose higher. His SATs ticked up slightly to 91%. Small progress, but progress nonetheless. By the time I left his room, he looked tired, but more settled. Thanks, nurse, he said softly, his gruffness giving way to gratitude. Sorry for giving you a hard time. That's what I'm here for, I told him gently. But the second I stepped out of the room, my shoulders slumped. The compliment should have lifted me, but instead all I could think about was his words. You know you've got a bruise on your neck, right? Even my patients were noticing. There was no escaping it. I went back to the nurse's station, tried to bury myself in charting again, but my mind was buzzing. Every glance, every smirk from a coworker felt magnified. I imagined what people were saying in break rooms, the stories they were spinning. Unprofessional, careless, embarrassing. The reprieve didn't last long. Janet appeared again in the hallway, this time without interruption. She caught my eye, gave me the slightest nod, and motioned for me to follow her. My stomach flipped. I rose slowly, legs heavy, and trailed behind her. This time, no one stopped us. The walk to her office was quiet except for the squeak of our shoes on the linoleum floor and the muffled voices of staff in the distance. I felt the heat rising in my cheeks again, shame clawing at me. No, ma'am. I didn't realize it was showing this morning. It wasn't intentional. I should have checked, Janet sighed, leaning back in her chair. We are professionals here. Every patient, every family member who walks through those doors is watching us, judging whether they can trust us. Your appearance is part of that trust. Do you understand what it looks like when a nurse is walking around with a glaringly obvious hickey on her neck? Her words cut like knives. I wanted to argue, to say that my clinical skills, my compassion, my dedication weren't diminished by a mark on my skin. But I bit my tongue. Arguing would only dig me in deeper. I understand, I said softly. I'm sorry. It won't happen again. Janet leaned forward, her voice firm. You're a good nurse. Your work is solid. But professionalism is more than just your charting and your vitals. It's about how you carry yourself. What patients and families see today will be remembered longer than any care plan. Do you want to be remembered as the nurse with the hickey? The question stung. No, I whispered. Then fix it. Immediately. Cover it. Conceal it. Do whatever you need to. And in the future, think about how you're presenting yourself when you walk in this building. I don't want to have this conversation again. When I stepped out of the bathroom, my hands still smelled faintly of powder from the concealer. My hair tickled against my neck as I'd rearranged it to cover the mark, but I still felt like everyone could see right through me. The hallway looked no different than before, nurses walking briskly with vital sheets, doctors scanning charts, orderlies pushing supply carts. But to me, it felt like I was walking through a spotlight. I went straight back to my station, sat down, and opened the charting software. If I looked busy enough, maybe people wouldn't approach me. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, but my mind wasn't on the vitals I just collected. Instead, I replayed Janet's words again and again. Do you want to be remembered as the nurse with the hickey? The thought made my stomach churn. When one of the newer nurses, Kara, leaned over to ask me about dosage timing for a med, she paused mid-sentence, studying my face. Hey, are you okay? She asked quietly. I forced a smile that felt brittle. Yeah, I'm fine. Just long morning. She nodded, seeming to accept that, but the kindness in her eyes nearly broke me. I wanted to confess everything, to spill my humiliation and fear, but instead I gave her the information she needed and sent her on her way. The hours dragged after that. I checked on Mr. Davis again, coached him through more breathing exercises, made sure he got his nebulizer treatment on time. He was doing marginally better, though still grumpy as ever. He didn't mention the bruise again, and for that I was grateful. With him, at least, I could still feel like a professional, but every time I walked the hall, I imagined whispers trailing behind me. Some might have been real, most were probably in my head, but they all blended into the same sound: ridicule. By the time my shift ended, I felt wrung out. My back ached, my legs were stiff, and my chest still carried that heavy knot of humiliation. I clocked out quickly, avoided eye contact with anyone lingering in the break room, and slipped out of the hospital through the side exit. Outside, the air was cool against my overheated skin. I stood there for a moment, just breathing, letting the sharp autumn breeze clear the fog in my head. The sun was setting, streaks of pink and orange stretching across the sky, but I hardly noticed. I just walked, head down, my bag slung across my shoulder. The walk home felt longer than usual. Every step was heavy, my thoughts circling endlessly. How many people had noticed? How long would this story circulate? Would it become one of those unit legends people whispered about for months? Remember that nurse who came in with a hickey and got dragged into Janet's office? By the time I reached my apartment building, my chest felt tight. I climbed the stairs, fished my keys out with shaking hands, and opened the door. Inside, the warm smell of garlic and onions hit me immediately. My boyfriend Ryan was in the kitchen, stirring something on the stove. He looked up when I walked in, his face brightening at first, until he saw my expression. His smile faded, replaced by concern. Hey, he said carefully, setting down the spoon. Rough day? I dropped my bag by the door and kicked off my shoes. You could say that. He wiped his hands on a towel and came over, pulling me into a hug. His arms around me felt good, grounding, but the knot in my stomach didn't ease. He leaned back, searching my face. What happened? I sighed, sinking onto the couch. Work. Janet called me into her office. Ryan frowned, sitting beside me. What for? I hesitated, chewing my lip. Part of me wanted to avoid it, to keep the humiliation to myself. But the look in his eyes, steady, patient, open, made it impossible to lie. For this. I tugged at my hair, shifting it to show the faint shadow still visible on my neck. Even under the concealer it was noticeable. His eyes widened slightly. Oh. Yeah. Oh, my voice cracked. Everyone noticed. Coworkers, even one of my patients. They were whispering about me all morning. Janet pulled me into her office and basically gave me a lecture on professionalism. Said I was damaging the image of the hospital. Asked if I wanted to be remembered as the nurse with the hickey. Ryan winced, running a hand through his hair. Damn. I didn't realize it was that obvious. It was, I said flatly. Bright as day. I should have looked in the mirror before I left. I should have covered it. Now everyone thinks I'm some unprofessional joke. He reached for my hand, squeezing it. You're not a joke. You're one of the hardest working people I know. You save lives every day. that mark doesn't erase any of that, try telling Janet that, I muttered. She knows, he countered gently. She said you're a good nurse, right? I nodded reluctantly. Yeah, she did. But it doesn't matter. That's not what people will remember. They'll remember the gossip, the story. The image. Ryan was quiet for a moment, his thumb brushing over my knuckles. People gossip because they're bored, because it makes them feel better about themselves. It'll blow over, I don't know if it will, I whispered. Hospitals don't forget things like this. It's like high school with scrubs. Once you get a reputation, it sticks. He sighed, leaning back against the couch. Look, I'm sorry. This is on me too. I shouldn't have let it happen last night, not when you had work today. I wasn't thinking. I shook my head quickly. It's not your fault. I could have said no, or at least checked before leaving this morning. I should have known better. But even as I said it, guilt twisted in my chest. Because part of me did blame him, just a little. Not for wanting me, not for touching me, but for leaving the mark so obvious. Still, I couldn't put that on him. It was my responsibility to manage how I showed up at work. We sat in silence for a while, the smell of dinner still wafting from the kitchen. My stomach growled faintly, though I didn't feel hungry. Finally, Ryan spoke again. So what now? I sighed, rubbing my temples. Now? I go back tomorrow. I keep my head down. I do my job. I make sure this never happens again. And I pray people forget about it. He nodded slowly. And tonight, we eat. You decompress. You let me take care of you for a change. His words softened me, easing some of the tension in my chest. I leaned against him, resting my head on his shoulder. I hate feeling like I'm not taken seriously. I work so hard, and one stupid mistake makes me look like a teenager sneaking out of her parents' house. Ryan kissed the top of my head. One mistake doesn't define you. You're more than that, and anyone who matters knows it. I closed my eyes, letting his warmth seep into me. The day had been long, humiliating, exhausting. But in that moment, I felt a little less alone.